All right, so I've started the meeting.
Okay. Let us see.
Boy, Sherry Damon can turn a 15-minute conversation into an hour-long conversation.
No comment.
Okay. So we are, oh, here, Ian.
Yes, I'm gonna move him over as a panelist. We are all here.
Well, good morning, everyone. Thank you
Good
for
morning.
joining us for this quarterly, more or less quarterly advocacy meeting. I'll call the meeting to order. Legislative Advocacy Committee of the Monterey Peninsula Water Management District, March 9th, 2023. It's like all committee members are present. And we can begin. Are there any changes to the agenda?
There are not.
Thank you. Okay. We can see if there are any comments from the public, if we have any members of the public on today.
Yes, good morning. This portion of the agenda is for a public comment on items not listed on today's agenda. Please limit your comment to 3 minutes in length.
Let's see if we have
And
any.
Chair Paul, I see no raised hands.
Thank you, Joelle. Well, following the example of Director Riley, I will say if a member of the public is on and does want to address the board during the meeting, to just make that known by raising your hand, or what else? Raising your hand or letting Joelle know that you wish to speak. Okay, so we've got our first action item is adoption of 2 sets of minutes. The first from December 2021 and then from June. And Director Oglesby wasn't even on the board at the time of those meetings, but are there any corrections from anyone?
Unfortunately, I was not on this committee at that time either, so I read the minutes and they all seem fine, but I can neither confirm nor deny.
Oh, yes, I understand.
Yeah, so just for a little bit of background information, these 2 sets of minutes, they were presented at the last Legislative Advocacy Committee back in October of last year. At that time, the committee members did not proceed with approving the meeting minutes from these 2 meeting dates because they did not have ample time to review them. Since that time, I have emailed these 2 sets of meeting minutes to the prior members of the Legislative Advocacy Committee. And I heard from Director Edwards and he had no suggested edits. And Karen Paul, I believe I also sent you these sets of minutes as well. And I don't recall seeing any communications from you.
Yes, I recall that you
Yeah.
did that, and I was remiss in not responding, I guess, at the time. I've reviewed them before this meeting. The only I don't have any substantive corrections, and the ones I do have are trivial, and we don't deserve our time at this meeting.
Right.
So just little proofreader type edits. I am fine, and thank you for doing that, though. I appreciate it. Sorry I didn't respond at the time, because the longer the time goes by, the harder it is to make any corrections. But they look okay to me. Shall we accept the minutes as they are, or with minor non-substantive corrections that can be made after the meeting?
I would recommend that we do that. So
Thank
perhaps
you.
a motion, to approve
Thank
the
you.
minutes as they are.
Thank you. I'll second that since I was there. And can we have a vote, please?
Mayor Oglesby,
Aye.
Supervisor Adams,
Aye.
Chair Paul,
Yes,
the motion is adopted.
thank you. On to our very meaty discussion item. And
All
I'll
right,
turn-
we have item 2 is a report from the Ferguson Group. We've got Roger Gwynn and Chris Griffin attending. We are in the throes of a submittal to our legislative delegation back in DC. Mayor Oglesby, you've probably seen the request for letter of support. I was on the phone with Sherry Damon earlier about that. Included in this submittal is our 2 stormwater capture and transfer to Pure Water Monterey for conversion to potable supply proposals. One is in the city of Monterey, which is the Lake El Estero project, but also augmented by the Hartnell Gulch dry weather flows and the Olivier Street Monterey Tunnel dry weather flows project, just in case we're overfunded on the Lake El Estero. And then Roberts Lake. All of these projects came from the Stormwater Master Plan that was developed through the actually through Monterey One Water, who has a stormwater planner, Jeff Condit, who put together a stormwater master plan. But anyway, these are getting submitted by Monday for federal earmarks on the tail of another piece of work that the Ferguson Group did for us last year, which was getting an allocation of $20 million in the Water Resources Development Act portion of the bill that got signed into law in December by President Biden. But with that, Roger, I'll turn it over to you guys to give an update on what we're doing and any other federal developments that you can talk about.
Sure, Dave, thank you very much. And again, I can just continue with that discussion if you'd like, in terms of the earmark request. As Dave said, the district will be submitting a request for $2.15 million in the FY24 appropriations process. And this money goes through the Energy and Water Development Appropriations Subcommittee, through the Corps of Engineers. And again, as Dave outlined, is consistent with the authority that the district secured last year in the Water Resources Development Act for an allocation and authorization for $20 million in assistance for water supply, water infrastructure investments on the peninsula. This is money that's available, and again, just to be clear, it's the $20 million is again a license. It's an authorization. It's a license to go hunt for appropriated dollars, monies to actually be invested and be spent, and so you're eligible to compete for earmarked funds for individual projects based upon that authority. The money is available on a 75-25 cost share basis, so it's very favorable in terms of 75% federal, 25% non-federal. It is with the Corps though, and so it does take a little bit of time, to get these projects started. But once they begin, you are able to secure. We'll be able to secure funding. We're confident to basically use up the existing authority, and as we show the Corps how we can spend those dollars efficiently and effectively and be a great, good partner in executing on with these resources, that'll create an opportunity for additional resources as well. The $20 million is not a sort of permanent lifetime cap or anything. I mean, it's something that can be adjusted as we draw down on those monies. So, but in this first year, even though we're asking for the $2.15 million, just want to be clear that what's happening across the country in response to these initial requests for whatever, this is a category of funding, it's called environmental infrastructure, is that the Corps has been saying they have a capability of just only $100,000 in response to these requests. And that really means what that's used for is to put together what's called a project partnership agreement. And so they'll negotiate agreement with the district on the allocation of funding plus a scope of work And, it may change this year, where we actually, that's the reason we're going to ask for the full amount and, what we could actually use in FY24. But it may be the case that, as I'd say, for the last 2 years, all of the new projects that have been requested have been held to this artificially low limit to, again, negotiate that project partnership agreement and establish that partnership with the Corps. But again, it's a step that has to be taken. We've got to prime the pump. We need to, sort of start this process, and the districts to be commended for moving out quickly in terms of requesting that assistance. And again, I think that in the long term, in the not too distant long term, and certainly over the next several fiscal years, this will be a good steady source of funding to support, complement, the investments the district's making in water supply, water quality, habitat improvement projects, that kind of thing.
And what we're doing, just for the benefit of the directors, is Maureen Hamilton is accumulating a list of other projects. So there's a couple more in Seaside. There's 1 or 2 more in Monterey. There's a couple poorly defined projects that we're trying to get some more meat on the bones. But when we have this project list together, we'll be working through the Corps' San Francisco regional office to kind of identify all these and take them to the next level, get a funding agreement together. They've got 2 forms of agreement. One's just for planning and the other's for planning, design, and construction. So the goal is to prioritize some of these projects. There's Laguna Grande wells, as an example, in Seaside that might be leveraged up to run through Pure Water Monterey. There's some other things that we're looking at in the COD area, the Carmel area, wastewater district area. There's a new well possibly to serve our reclamation project in Pebble Beach. So anyway, we got to get that entire list together and develop a relationship with the regional folks at the Corps. And then, as Roger said, for the next couple of years, we should be able to draw down on this money through a variety of different requests. So.
And the way Dave and the staff have put this together too, it's great because for the long term, it's characterized, again, the title we're using is for the requested funds is Monterey Peninsula Stormwater Diversion and Recycling. So it's generic enough that it'll be able to cover a whole host of things that are, needed, that are priorities for the district going forward.
Yeah.
So that's the immediate issue, as Dave said. That has to go into the 2 Senate offices on Monday, and that will be, we'll get that in, and then shortly thereafter it'll go into Congressman Panetta's office as well. And as you will recall, Congressman Panetta is the one who requested this assistance, this authority on behalf of the district. And certainly will be, again, going back to him to ask for his assistance in actually getting the dollars to use the authority. Today is, more stepping back on a broader level. We just wanted to give you a quick update on the budget and some of the infrastructure package opportunities, Infrastructure Act opportunities, and a couple of changes within the Congress that'll be important to you. And then real quickly, Chris will give you an update on some of the legislative priorities in a minute. In terms of, yes.
Oh, sorry to interrupt before we
Sure.
move on to that. Can I just ask you, how familiar is Jimmy Panetta with the situation with the Pure Water Monterey and the expansion? I mean, I read in the papers that he participated in this event. I didn't know that how it was arranged, but it was a great idea that you had the event with Jimmy Panetta and others to publicize it. But do you have a sense of how familiar he is with the entire situation, the expansion being at the moment at a standstill?
Yeah, let me answer that one. But
Okay.
let me answer that with jumping ahead to item 4, just really quickly. Where's my share screen? There we go.
I'd love to be able to get a sense of how much support we could,
So
he
this
could
was,
provide.
yeah, this was Monday's event. And this is Assistant Secretary for Water and Science, Tanya Trujillo. And they set this up. This is the Department of Interior, and they are on a little bit of a roadshow talking about the bipartisan infrastructure law and some of the, in our case, it was Title 16 money. And actually, the Ferguson Group, Roger's firm, was very instrumental in introducing us to the program. And then more importantly, we did a tour, gosh, what do you think, Roger, maybe 6 years ago, 5 years ago, where we complained quite excessively about the criteria for awarding these dollars, both to John Watts in Feinstein's office, as well as the Bureau itself, the Office of Management and Budget. We kind of went on a tour saying that the whole program was stilted in favor of the big orange counties of the world, projects that had already been funded, and it was hard for little orphan, mid-coastal, fresh ideas to compete. And they actually, I won't say they radically changed their criteria, but they listened to our story quite a bit. And the next go round, Monterey One Water was awarded I forget what it was. I think it was maybe 5.5 million. But then 2 more appropriations. We got a total of 19.6 million of awards through the Title 16 program, through the WIN Act that Feinstein sponsored. And then this most recent 10.3 was basically taking us up to the appropriation limit of 30 million. And that was all done through, trips back to DC with Paul and myself, Paul Sciutto, and myself being shepherded around by Roger and his crew, sometimes with board members, sometimes without board members. But anyway, truth be told, $30 million, the 10.3 still waiting for a signing of the water purchase agreement. So the answer to your question, Jimmy did attend as a member of our federal delegation. He was asked a question by Dennis Taylor of the Herald about the need to sign the water purchase agreement, and Jimmy was right on it, saying, well aware of it, that's a necessary step. We don't think that this funding is in jeopardy yet. We believe that we'll get there on the water purchase agreement. So he is plugged in definitely to what our plight is. I don't think, on more than one occasion, his aide, Mark Denon, so DC aide, who's kind of following this whole program, has said, where there's a federal nexus, we'll do whatever we can to help. But some of these, like the water purchase agreement, is a local problem. It's going to have to get resolved locally. But we are told that he's had some words with Cal-Am over getting a move on. And then you saw the subsequent article on, I think it was Wednesday morning, on the local officials' fret over the status of the grants. The way the communication link works is Landwatch shares our problems directly with Panetta's office. Panetta tells Mark Denon to find out whether these are really in jeopardy, and Mark Denon calls myself and Paul Sciutto to make sure that he has the story straight to report back to his boss, the congressman. So there's a pretty good communication loop going on.
Oh, that's great. I'm really glad to know that. Thank you all for doing that. It's great. Do other committee members have questions about this?
Just a comment. When I read the article about it, I was thinking it would have been a good opportunity for some of the board members to have attended that event with you, just to be able to share the responsibility of getting the information to a variety of different people.
Yeah, we did suggest that. Department of Interior carefully scripted the whole thing, and chose the attendees and what have you. We didn't have much control over it.
Through the chair,
Please.
I agree exactly what Mary just said, and I just heard Dave, and I understand that. I think we've been to all of those type of programs where they limit the attendees, but I wish I would have known that it was going on and that you guys were having this so-called press conference, even though I wouldn't have been invited. I understand that part, but I do think we should have known before the fact.
Yeah, good point.
I agree with you, Ian.
I do as well. And I was going to say, even apart from this particular event, if there are other events or meetings where it would be helpful to have a board member to let us know, so that we can, we can figure out if at least one board member should attend.
Yep, that's a real good point. The others in attendance, Joaquin Esquivel from the State Water Board was there. But interestingly, Dave Egerton, who is the executive director of ACWA, the Association of California Water Agencies, and myself, and I can't remember who the third one was, we were instructed to get there at 10:45. And so we weren't even invited to attend the tour with the congressman and with the assistant secretary. We were invited to show up for the remarks that were made at 11 o'clock. And so, which I was actually surprised, because Dave Egerton, he represents all of ACWA, which is, statewide, and one of the, if not the largest public water industry association in the country. Very important. And I thought he was given a little bit of the short shrift as just showing up for the remarks and a photo op. So.
Well, thank you. Thank you for that, for filling us in. So Roger, you want to get back to your?
Yeah, and I'll just, I was going to talk about the infrastructure package too, so I'll just skip to that real quickly and just say that just a few words about that. As you saw from Assistant Secretary Trujillo's event on the 6th, the administration is making a big push on this in terms of all the benefits of that program. And I would just point out that, and we will continue keeping Dave aware of new opportunities that are coming out of that process. The administration itself is publicizing the fact, all of the investments that are being made. And in California alone, $18.1 billion is at least a figure I've seen. And I don't know if that's the one that she used, but it's a figure that has gone, the amount of money that's gone to the state of California. And, it's gone for, and certainly water resource projects have benefited significantly from that. A couple of, there are some upcoming opportunities that we'll be bringing to the district's attention when they occur. And one in particular, which I think we've talked about in the past, but is a new program that we're expecting an announcement on any moment. And it's the Aquatic Ecosystem Restoration and Protection Project Authority, a new program under the Bureau of Reclamation that's modeled after a Corps of Engineers authority that's for, again, ecosystem restoration projects, and certainly fits with your habitat priorities and things of that sort. So they're also they currently under the Water Smart program have put out there's a solicitation that's out right now for a multi-benefit authority, a multi-benefit water resources grant program, and which is a new program as well. And both of these will be recurring. We'll be seeing them for the next several years. This is the first year that these monies are being made available. And again, new opportunities for for the district. And then finally, in May of this year, we're expecting the second year of funding under NOAA for fish passage, related funding, barrier removals, that kind of thing as well. And we've districts taken a look at those in the past, and we'll again continue to alert you to those opportunities as they emerge. In terms of the, again, today, right, as we speak, the budget, or just prior to this meeting, the budget itself was released. The president released the fiscal year 2024 budget. And it certainly, has significant increases in it in a variety of areas. That'll be of interest to you. And significant increases relative to the FY23 enacted levels, which were already pretty robust. So we've got just as an example we will be reporting back to you on the details of these as we go through them. They literally have just come out, so we don't have a detailed report for you, but we'll be sending that to Dave and then be circulated with the directors after, shortly. But just as an example, the APA budget itself was increased, it was proposed for increase in 2024 by 19% to $12 billion. And again, that's 19% increase over FY23 enacted. And the Bureau of Reclamation, actually overall Department of Interior itself, the budget request is coming in at 18.9 billion, which is $2 billion or 12% over the FY23 enacted levels. And that includes 1.4 billion for the Bureau of Reclamation, which again is a primary source of resources for the district for water management improvements and water efficiency improvements, water recycling and the like. And so, significant funding there. And we're continuing to see throughout the budget across the board, the prioritization of climate resiliency types of improvements. And in the case of Bureau of Reclamation, that and drought mitigation are getting a lot of attention. 62.9 million for Water Smart, again, a program that a series of programs, grant funding opportunities that the district has looked at in the past and has benefited from. And with the even in the Bureau of Reclamation, there continues to be priorities, as there are across the administration overall, focus on not only focusing on climate resiliency, but prioritizing underserved communities, and within the Bureau of Reclamation, addressing aging infrastructure needs. We've talked about the budget request itself. Or the earmark request, pardon me. And then beyond that, the only other thing before I turn it over to Chris for just a brief update on the legislative priorities, just want to mention to you that Senator Padilla is now, as with the new Congress, he's assumed a new position. He's the new chairman of the key subcommittee within the Environment and Public Works Committee, the Fisheries, Water and Wildlife Subcommittee, which is responsible for not only a number of fishery-related concerns, but it has full responsibility for EPA and the Corps of Engineers. And again, he's been a great ally, and certainly we will continue to work with him closely on any and all things that the district priorities. And again, he was also heavily involved in the final action on your Water Resources Development Act, Environmental Infrastructure Authority that was secured in the last Water Resources Development Act. And again, this subcommittee that he now chairs is a subcommittee that will do future updates to that bill and that authority. With that, let me just turn to Chris.
Sorry, Roger, can you please tell me the name of that committee again, the subcommittee?
It's the Senate Committee on Environment and Public Works, and the subcommittee is the Fisheries, Water and Wildlife Subcommittee. So it's
Roger, were all the subcommittees in that publication you sent me a couple of weeks ago about the committee appointments for the year?
Yes, sir. Yes.
Okay, so I'll share that with these directors. Will that committee oversee the Bureau's Habitat Restoration Program?
Not the Bureau, no, that's in a separate committee. That's in the Energy and Natural Resources Committee, the
Okay.
Water and Power Subcommittee.
Yep.
Which
All right.
Mr. Wyden is still the chair of that, I think. Is that correct, or has that changed? Okay,
Yeah, I think that's the case.
okay.
Great news about Senator Padilla.
Yeah, it is. It's great. It really is. It's great for the state. Tremendous. Yes, absolutely. And Chris?
Yeah, hey everyone, good to be with you. I'm Chris Griffin. I haven't worked with you guys before, but glad to be on. Like Roger said, I'm just going to take a few minutes and go through some of the more forward-looking sort of legislative items that we're keeping track of, and give you an update on some of them. So first off, I was just going to speak a little bit about Senator Feinstein's STREAM Act. You guys may know of this. It's a piece of legislation that she introduced last year with a few other senators, Senator Kelly and Sinema of Arizona, and it contains several hundred million, actually, I think over $1 billion in authorizations for water infrastructure and storage infrastructure, a pretty significant investment for various Bureau of Reclamation programs. It did not make it out of the Senate or into law last year. And since Congress has turned over into the 118th Congress, means we'll have to wait for her to reintroduce it or another member to reintroduce the legislation in this Congress. I just looked before our meeting started and she has not, as of today, reintroduced it. So we'll have to wait on action on that front before we see any movement, before we see any incorporation of it into committee schedules or whatnot for hearings. But we will stay apprised of that and keep you updated. And that would be in the House and Senate Energy and Natural Resources Committees, Senate Energy and Natural Resources Committee, and the House Natural Resources Committee. The second piece of legislation is the 2023 Farm Bill. This is a piece of legislation that gets reauthorized or reworked every 5 years. So the last one went through in 2018. It is due up this year. There is a lot of uncertainty about what will be in the Farm Bill. We know that there's going to be a pretty significant focus on conservation programs, which includes water conservation programs, but other conservation programs, forestry conservation, land conservation. And there are also going to be a number of necessary reauthorizations that happen every Farm Bill surrounding nutrition assistance and stuff like that. The House and Senate have already started working on Farm Bill related hearings and activity. Just this past week, the Senate Agriculture Committee held a conservation and forestry hearing to examine some of the conservation and forestry titles within the Farm Bill. And there was a little bit of discussion of water conservation within it. The House just held a hearing yesterday on similar provisions, but more focused on the forestry aspect. So we haven't seen a lot of activity yet on the water side of titles and policy within the Farm Bill. My thinking is that there's going to be a bit of a compressed schedule this year with the Farm Bill, given the debt ceiling renegotiations and debates that have to happen probably around July, which is going to suck a lot of the oxygen out of the room elsewhere in Congress during debt ceiling negotiations. But we'll see. It still remains, I think, fairly uncertain what all will happen there. Certainly more complicated now than in some of the past years, given that there's a split Congress with Republicans taking the speakership gavel in the House. The next quick item is the Waters of the United States rule. If you have kept up with that, there are two fairly significant lawsuits surrounding the president's recent WOTUS rulings. The first, the Sackett case, is expected to be decided within the coming months in the next spate of Supreme Court opinions. And that is concerning generally the EPA's authority to regulate wetlands that are on private lands. So that will have a fairly significant impact broadly on the EPA's authority. So even though that is a fairly narrow scope, it's very possible that the Supreme Court takes a much broader approach in its ruling. Recently, 24 states led by Republican attorneys general sued the Biden administration as well over their recent WOTUS rule. And I think 150, Roger, correct me if I'm wrong, about 150 House members, Republican House members signed a resolution of disapproval, disapproving of the ruling. So that comes closely on the heels of the Sackett case, and it hasn't gone before the Supreme Court yet, or hasn't been argued, but it has made its way there. So we will see some action on that this year. But I, disclosure, I'm not an attorney, so I couldn't give you a good forecast of how the Supreme Court will take that up. But I think as we move through the Congress, we'll expect to see continued action on WOTUS and especially in the House. Any sort of formal rulings or legislation trying to overturn the president's WOTUS rule will almost certainly die in the Senate. So probably no large changes pending the Supreme Court case. The last major item that we're tracking is NEPA and permitting reform. And just recently, the House last week held a hearing on remember the acronym. The acronym stands for, it's the Building Act from Senator Graves, Congressman Graves of Louisiana. It is titled I don't have the name here. Oh, here it is. The Building United States Infrastructure Through Limited Delays and Efficient Reviews Act. So the Builder Act. It is.
We're all about acronyms here in DC, the staff spend hours and hours
trying to dream these up.
Dream the best acronym. Right?
Obfuscation.
Right.
I came from working on the Hill, and Roger's not even kidding. People spend way too much time, too much taxpayer money on coming up with acronyms for bills. But so that is a piece of legislation that's expected to sort of form the core of a broader permitting reform package that House Republicans are going to put forth, and that we expect there will be some pressure on the Senate to take up. Right at the end of last Congress, you may have seen in the news, Senator Manchin of West Virginia, who's the chairman of the Senate Energy and Natural Resources Committee, also had a permitting reform package that he was trying to push, and had said that he had, I think, 47 or 48 other Democrats that would sign on to it. It ended up not going anywhere. There was a little bit of a hullabaloo around that, but now that a more friendly, to permitting reform Republican House has taken over, I think we'll see some uptake of that sort of legislation again, and a constant push from Republicans, certainly in the House, but also in the Senate, to take action on permitting reform and NEPA reform. I also think that there may be some, even if it's not the exact form or optimal in the eyes of Republicans' proposals, there may be some pressure on the Biden administration to take that up from within their own party because of investments in clean energy and other federal funds that have gone out the door, significant amounts of money that have gone out the door recently, that some critics have pointed to permitting as being an obstacle to efficiently spending that money. That's sort of it on the legislative outlook, but if there's any questions.
Let me just add one quick thing, is that on the permitting reform at the federal level is really, at least in part, to from the Democratic side focused on I mean, there's interest from the green tape kind of parallels, to what's going on at the state level in California. So an interest in looking for ways to streamline review of environmental restoration types of projects as well. So anyway, happy to answer any questions that you may have.
Thank you. Thank you. Any questions on this last report, Chris's report?
Thank you. It'll be fun to work with you, Chris. I hope you
looking
enjoy
forward to
your
it.
work in water.
Where were you working on the Hill?
I worked in one of the Alaska senators' offices, so I'm originally from Alaska, but I did public lands, natural resources, and energy stuff in Senator Murkowski's office. So,
Great.
Ah,
Yeah.
very interesting. Well,
Yeah.
Before that was on the House, was it on the House side or was it with Senate Energy and Natural Resources Committee, the Water and Power Subcommittee before that? So
Oh,
yeah, we're lucky
Great.
to have Chris with us. Yeah.
yeah, great experience.
yeah.
Very interesting. So any comments or questions for Chris? Thank you. Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you.
And we can then move on to, well, we could move on, but I wonder, Dave, we're going to be talking later about the plan, the legislative outreach plan. And I see reading that the real purpose of the plan is to provide a framework, guidance, direction to you and to our consultants. And is there should we discuss with this group, our federal consultants, anything about the plan before they leave us today? Oh, Dave, please unmute yourself. Dave.
Sorry about that. Yeah, I think we're okay there. We tend to track legislation mostly at the state level. And then as you've witnessed, we chase money at the federal level, perhaps a little bit better than we have at the state level, although we're getting better at it at the state level as well. Our priorities for this year and really going into next year is the WERDA Act money that we talked about, Chapter 219 of the Army Corps of Engineers, and then this newly released habitat restoration under the Bureau. I'd like, it's all in Mary's district, but I'd like to hook up the Carmel River Free, the Rancho Cañada restoration, and the Rancho Cañada Villages stormwater catchment, all kind of wrapped up into one group to see if we can't do something at the federal level. That's not in the proposed legislative plan, but we're going to be very limited on what our federal focus is. It's going to be on WERDA, and to see if we can finally do something on habitat restoration. The fisheries, next month, we're going to have the Los Padres Dam study final draft discussed. I don't think we're going to get to any fish passage work for a couple of years on that. So I think we can probably let Chris and Roger go.
Before we do, Dave, can I just ask a quick question about the project that you just cited, the Palo Corona, Rancho, Carmel River Free, etc.? Is that anything that we should speak to Maureen about as far as looking at some earmarked money specifically to do a study of that whole part of the river? You and I've talked about that, and I know there's interest from both CalAm and Water Resource of the Monarch Peninsula Regional Parks District to partner with us in that regard.
Yeah, I think the problem.
And I don't know if we need Chris and Roger for this or not.
Well, if we were going to try to slip in something for an earmark by Wednesday with Panetta's office, we're going to miss the senators because they're the 13th, And actually Padilla was last week for everything except this environmental infrastructure. So we've already missed on that type of an item, missed Padilla's. And as I said, there's probably no way to get it together for Monday. But I like the idea, as we talked about it a couple days ago. I just don't think we're fully formed yet. And it's another one of these cases where we're probably going to need to get at a minimum, four organizations together, if not more. And I just don't think we're going to be ready. It's just not fully formed, but I think we should take this opportunity this calendar year to try to do something. I think this came from Lou Lou Bauman, right, as an idea. I think it's a good idea.
It came from our office, but we
from your
spoke to
office,
him first, yeah.
Yeah. I think it is a very good idea. And I think that as you'll be discovering, there's kind of a pent up frustration with the property owners further up the river that, if everything that I'm thinking about in terms of habitat restoration is the lower river, it's all of those projects that are currently in the process. But if we could wrap it somehow and get the whole river kind of evaluated, there's some things that were done after the big rains of 1998, that there was a whole study done on where the kind of the pinch points are on the river and what could be done about them. And then nothing was ever done with that study. But I think we're ready again to, look at these things.
So
I
that
just don't-
study
I
was
just don't
done
see it getting
before
near
the
that.
dam was taken down, right?
It wasn't really part of that. It was, a result of the flooding. Remember, Highway 1 got completely taken out.
Oh, totally, yeah.
Yeah. And so, big events like that gather attention. But I think we have two separate issues here. One is all of the habitat restoration that's going on as part of Palo Corona and Carmel River Free. And then, and this is, another Army Corps problem. Whenever you get into the floodplain, there's all sorts of rules about, if you put in an embankment or a berm, then you need to offset it with an overflow channel. And, so there's the flood control issues and the habitat restoration issues. And I don't think they all line up because they're in different places of the river. So I think doing an overall assessment of the river and its needs is a bigger project that needs to get better defined. And we're just not able to do that for this cycle of earmarks. That window's closing Wednesday of next week.
Thank you. Not
Well,
thank you, but I appreciate the
what-
understanding.
Yeah.
And what, if I could just add one other thing, Chair, that to what Dave said, there could be some opportunities for competitive grant funding to move forward the ideas that you're suggesting, Director. So it could be that outside of the earmark process, or could be some. We can stay in touch with Dave and work,
Okay,
look at other opportunities to help move this forward. And if it's if it ends up being, there may be a couple of options, with agencies like upcoming funding opportunities through National Marine Fisheries Service, NOAA Fisheries, or there may be some, there are some planning opportunities that actually are on a rolling basis through the Corps of Engineers for special studies that don't lead to projects, but where you just ask the Corps to come in and assist you in developing and looking at options, developing alternatives, that kind of thing, updating prior studies that have been done. There are monies that are available for that, again, on a rolling basis that we can just basically
keep your
apply
eye out
for.
Good, okay, thank you.
About the outreach plan, if you, Roger and Chris, I'd just like to invite you, if looking at this draft here, if you see anything that's not included that you think should be added, or anything that's unclear, anything that would make this outreach plan more helpful to your work for us, to let us know in the next few days, because we have time before the next board meeting to improve it.
Absolutely. Happy to.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you. Well, then
Onward and
anything, okay, anything more further for our federal consultants? No, well, we thank you very much for all of the work you're doing on our behalf and for the
Absolutely.
information.
Well, thank you. Thank you very much. Appreciate it.
And I guess we can move on to our state agenda.
Okay.
Welcome, Mr. Arriaga.
Good morning. Thank you so much, and welcome to Mary. I haven't seen you for a while, Mary. So good to see you there, and welcome to Ian on this committee. I think Ian, with your work in the water issues around Seaside and Fort Ord over the many years, you'll find this committee very interesting, both for the peninsula and the city of Seaside. So welcome. There has been quite a bit going on. This is the beginning of a new 2-year session here in Sacramento. The legislature convened in December for the swearing in of all the new members. And this is probably, it is the largest number of new members to a legislature at any one time. So there's a lot going on as far as introductions and getting to know some of the new members. Lori and I have been spending a lot of time there at the Capitol, or what is available at the Capitol because of the construction that's going on there, but the offices and so forth. So things are coming back to normal as far as offices being able to meet with members and staff and so forth. So we've been doing a lot of that. But like I said, there are a lot of new members, and we've been getting to know them as well as our current members. Senator Laird, we've had some conversation with him early on since December and January over some issues and possible legislation that we talked about with the new Assembly member Don Addis. Back in November, the incoming speaker, Robert Rivas, had asked me to meet with her and fill her in on some of the issues on the peninsula, because she was new to that, coming from San Luis Obispo. I haven't spent much time there, so I'll talk a little bit more about that later on. But then also, you're keeping the incoming speaker apprised of our issues. It's going to be great having him. He'll take his position at the end of July 1st, he will become the speaker, and during the meantime, he will be beginning to staff up as his office has been getting busier and busier. But the nice thing is he's aware of some of our issues. I know Dave has met with them. We've had him come over to the area. He's familiar with pure water and so forth. So those are all good things that we have looking forward to the incoming speaker and working with him. As far as issues go, we started this year with all the floods that brought a lot of attention both at the federal and state level, and we aren't over with that yet. The storm that we got coming over the next couple of days is expected to be just as heavy as what we've had. Maybe not with the winds and so forth, but I believe Lori sent me a note this morning that the governor included Monterey now as an area as part of a state emergency area of location. So those things are still we're still dealing with them, and both at the state and federal level. And having with all this abundance of water, still having to deal with what we still have as a drought. It puts the focus on the amount of water that we're getting right now at this time, the trillions of gallons, and how much of it are we really being able to save for the future. So that is an ongoing discussion in the legislature and so forth. The other issues that this current legislature is dealing with as far as priority issues, the homelessness issues continues to be a priority, housing, and the whole opioid issue, crime, and so forth. So we'll continue to see a lot of that. But having said that, the legislature has met their deadline for the introduction of bills this year. We've got an extraordinary high number, and that's usually expected with the new legislature, particularly with this many new assembly members. wanting to put their legislation out there, wanting to make sure their constituents are aware of what they're doing here at the in Sacramento. So a lot of that will be dealt with over the next several months as we begin the hearing process, which started just recently. We've also had the introduction of the governor's proposed budget early in January, and that is beginning to make its way through the legislative process, through the subcommittee process. And we'll see what it looks like in May with the May revise. So a lot of moving parts right now, a lot of things going on as far as issues. There's a talk of a water bond, and we've been involved with that, and we'll talk about that more as we move on. But having said that and giving you that overview of where we're at and what we're doing right now as far as Sacramento goes, unless you have any questions, I'll turn it over to Lori to go more in depth on those issues.
Any questions or comments from our committee members?
A political question?
Sure.
Saw just one article about this and nothing beyond that. There were some rumblings within the assembly as far as the speakership beginning July 1.
I was going to say they passed a resolution. It's in there. So when they came in December and they swore everyone in, they voted on a resolution that was worked out with attorneys that had Rendon go to retain a speakership until June 30th. I have heard nothing, and I mean, from any rumblings of that will change unless they are trying to renegotiate, but I doubt that. And if they do, they have to take it back to the legislature.
But there was nothing, it's just that Rendon is going to leave. It's not guaranteeing that Robert would be in.
Yes, it is.
It is guaranteeing that.
Yes, it
That's
is.
the more important part.
Yes, and I can send you that resolution that basically outlines. It's pretty nuanced of how they came to this agreement, but the vote is to have Rendon as speaker until June 30th, and the vote is also to put Robert in on June 30th. So it's already done. There will not be another vote come June 30th.
Thank you so much.
And Robert is, I was just on his website yesterday, and I'll share this with you. You see my screen?
Yes.
Yeah, he's keeping it, speaker designate.
Got it.
And his second one in line is elected to succeed, Rendon.
Excellent.
So
Excellent.
I think,
good.
Yeah, I don't think there's any question.
Okay.
Yeah, so I know a lot of people were questioning, and he did not want a second vote. So he wanted all done in one. In fact, he's probably gained supporters since that vote was taken on December 5th. So it's hopefully a smooth transition, but definitely a clear path.
Thank you.
Good to know.
So in the essence of time, and my report is a little bit more detailed, but I'll just give a quick legislative update. You have the track in front of you. As John said, we have a lot of new members. We have 300 bills more introduced this year than it was in the previous first year of the session. So we have 2,600 plus bills. The Senate, not as many, but the Assembly went a little bit wild. And as you can see, a tremendous amount of water bills, a lot of water storage. As John said, we've got 3 bond bills and a quasi bill. And I say quasi, it's a constitutional amendment that takes 3% of the general fund and every year and dedicates it to water and wildfires with a 50-50 split. Not very optimistic, as constitutional amendments are really hard to get through, but I'll go more on the bond stuff a little bit later. But we've been working with Dave on kind of looking at these positions because there's so many water bills. We're waiting for them to get out of their first committee because we know a lot of them are going to be held up to really kind of start looking at positions. One of them is going to be the Caballero Aqua sponsored bill that will have a lot of room for potential amendments. So we'll be meeting with Dave in the next week to look at if we want to get anything out of that bill. So it's, as I said, it's going to be a pretty wild legislative year. Again, a lot of homelessness, a tremendous amount of opioid bills, and housing, but water definitely is on an uptick, and I'm sure we will see more after this weekend storm. For the budget update, Governor put out a $308 billion budget. As you know, we have a $22 billion shortfall. And how he kind of addressed this, and it kind of goes more in depth in the report, is that, and it's really important to know that in his January proposal, he does not assume that we are in a recession. He is not taking any money out of our reserves. In fact, he's putting money into the reserves, and he's paying down our debts and our retirement requirements. But how he kind of spread rather than cuts, how he's done this, and it is interesting. Like, this governor, more so than any other governor, has done multi-year budgets, which is very confusing, because he can say, oh, I've given homelessness $21 billion. Well, that, yes, but you've done it over, 5 funding cycles and emergency fundings, and like, okay, what are you putting in this year? He does funding delays, he does funding shifts and triggers, and so he's pushing, like, you have bills. I'm not going to pay this one. I'm going to push it out, and I'm not going to pay as much here. And so right now he's hoping that the projections in May are going to be more positive. We're hearing that they're not. However, one that he did not cut, and he will not cut, is in the area of water. And this goes back to his multi-year budgets. As you see, he's saying he put $3.9 billion in drinking water and water supply. Well, that is over multi-years. And so he is continuing his multi-year investments in water. The only new money that we're really seeing is in flood investments. That he put $202 million, and also drought contingency and looking for new water supplies. And of course, the San Joaquin River Basin recharge. But one thing that's going to be interesting, and we've been participating with Aqua on some of these things, and they have yet to take a position, is modernizing these water rights. I'm sure you've been hearing the drums of water rights, that they're archaic, of how they're done, that they do not benefit people of color and disadvantaged communities, and it's kind of an old boys club. Well, it's coming to a head, and this is we're gonna start looking at revising and modernizing water rights and it's going to take a long time. This has been, since we've been here in this state, and it hasn't been revised since 1914. So this is one that we're going to have to monitor as just an overall issue that is going to have importance all over the state in pertaining to water. Does anyone have any question on the budget? Okay, so
not on the budget specifically, but I do have a question. You can hold this, you can answer this later if it fits better with your
okay,
plan.
Karen, go ahead.
My question is about the role of Aqua in all of this. I mean, whether it relates to the budget or more broadly, how influential is Aqua on these water related issues?
Aqua is the gorilla in the room, if you want me to be very, honest and using, an analogy. They are the umbrella agency of all the water agencies statewide. It's like, if I was going to do, and Mary would know this, if I'm going to do county issues, it's CSAC. It is the go-to. They are the big ones. And then you have the offshoots, like you have your the municipal utilities, CMUA, and then you have the small water systems, and you have all these offshoots per se, kind of like the counties do with urban and rural and etc. But the umbrella organization that has them all is Aqua. And so if the governor is going to do anything big on water, they confer with Aqua.
Okay,
So that's why. Yes, it is very
Go.
important that we are have such a great relationship with them. They have been very helpful, and of John and I take advantage at all we can in participating in every stakeholder and coalition group, which I'll go into. And then we have our weekly lobbying calls. And, so you have lobbyists and representatives from, all the water agencies throughout the state, and getting perspectives of what they're doing and what they're seeing. And it kind of gives you a global view of what's going on in the water world.
Very good. So it's good that it's important that we work effectively with them. And what about the industry side? Because I'll repeat to you a comment that George Riley shared with another committee earlier this week. He said he ran into Kevin Tilden, the CEO of CalAm, at a Christmas party, and George Riley asked CalAm, "Why don't you just give up?" Was reportedly the conversation, something like that. And Kevin Tilden's response was, "Because why would we give up? We have a lot of support in Sacramento. We have a lot of support at the CPUC." So my second question is, how powerful is the lobby from the industry side, which I guess CalAm is the largest company in California?
Well, we could look at what they pay, how many lobbyists they have, and how much they're paying for them, how many law firms they have, and whatnot. But I'll be honest with you, Karen, that's a matter of opinion. Of course, he's going to say that. The industry, when you're dealing with private industries, they do have a lot more flexibility financially, et cetera. But in my 25-year experience, that doesn't always equate to victories. So it's a matter of perspective. So I'm glad he feels that way. I don't know if that's necessarily the truth, but that this is, again, just my opinion, how I see it work, and how it kind of works within the local agencies and the statewide.
Okay, well, so it sounds like the legislators are listening to Aqua, and
yes, they very much do.
Yeah. Okay, thank you.
Yeah, and I think Cal Water Service is actually bigger than CalAm in California.
Oh, okay.
As
Thank
a
you.
Class A utility.
I think another key point is that with Aqua, we're fortunate to have Senator Caballero, who they really rely on a lot as far as some of the statewide legislation. So we've got her ear as far as issues related to this area.
But we have had a special relationship with Aqua. We won the best small water district or medium water district outreach award one year. We won the Aqua Region 5 outreach award another year, and those awards are only for legislative outreach. When Bill Monning was still with the Senate, we had a very good relationship, and his office would ask us to review things like Proposition 1 for content and impact on coastal communities. And so Cindy Tuck, who's the deputy director of Aqua in charge of legislative affairs, knows us quite well, which is a interesting position to be in, being such a small water district.
Yeah, and I see that kind of reliance increasing, especially with Rivas taking speakership and the possibility of change of leadership in the Senate, that they will be focusing on the Central Coast region a little bit more for political lifting and advocacy, which we are more than happy to assist them when it benefits the district. So speaking of benefiting the district, so we have these bond bills, and we participated in these coalitions for the last 3-4 years. And if you remember, they've been looking at putting a bond for that amount of time, but the state actually said no bond, will pony up general fund money. But this year, there's more of an appetite for the bond because the general fund money is just not there. And they're looking at a larger bond, $10 to $15 billion. They want to put wildfire forest management. It's more palatable. It's pulling a little bit better, but water definitely taking the front seat. Because this is an internal working document and has not been still in draft form, I didn't want to share a lot of the details with you, but kind of letting you know the funding categories that they have decided on as of right now. It totals about $7.5 billion, Aqua's proposal. And also on the flip side, as John was talking, is that storage is a huge issue right now. Again, we have all this rain but we don't have the capacity to store, where we don't again just have the wherewithal. So I shared a little bit more detail of their policy framework, because this is more like a high level of, you know, how we're going to approach all these storage bills, anything that comes up in the budget, that it's just a guiding working document. And one thing in talking with Dave before participating is that he was emphatic that, and what we've been doing this whole time, is one size does not fit all for the state, and that we need to look at a regional port. And, you know, when the state came out with their water plan, they kind of just scrapped it all, and that there really needs to be more power and flexibility given to the local agencies in any projects that they were funding. And even if it's and a little bit more flexibility, the tangential approach of how they look at water storage. So you can kind of see it's very 30,000 foot level of their policy framework, but we're going to continue to participate and bring back what we're seeing and where the funding is going to go, and what projects the district can plug in and will be viable. And if we need to change anything within their framework or within Aqua's lobbying approach, that we will do so. If there are no questions, I'll move on to the governor's executive order.
Any questions from other committee members? Okay.
So come every March, we expect the governor to release his water executive order, you know, based on snowpack and whatnot. And last year, he put all the state agencies into stage 2 requirements. And where we are right now is going to be very, very interesting of how much rain we have. Are we still considered in a drought? He's using very ambiguous language, especially after the storm, of where we fall. And in talking with Dave, and what's important for the district, and if it is not included in the governor's executive order, if stage 2 is not rescinded, those requirements, because MPWMD is not in a drought, not even close to it. It does not apply to us. Or there are, for those that need to be in stage 2, stay in stage 2. But for those that don't need to be there, let's get out of it. So we're going to wait to see if he nullifies that. And if he does not, then we'll be drafting a letter to the governor's office. We will set up legislative meetings as well as a meeting with the governor's administration to kind of plead our case. So, and
it's a little symbolic. And we've talked about this. This will actually come as a topic to the Water Demand Committee next month, early next month. Our difficulty would be if we unilaterally said we are out of stage 2, going back to stage 1. It's unlikely that CalAm would go there with us, because they like to be a very rule-following, law-abiding entity, at least on the surface. And so we think that what we would need to do, because every May 1, we make a declaration as to whether we need to go to rationing. Do we have enough water for the next 17 months, i.e. the remainder of the water year plus the entire following year? And we are going to make a declaration that, you know, we're all good. We're out of drought. And so I think what we will do is end up sending a letter to the governor's office saying, hey, you need to address the executive order. On a practical standpoint, it doesn't do a whole lot. Stage 2 for us is just greater enforcement and greater public awareness. But, you know, our stage 1 is still no water waste and you're still supposed to ask to serve water, a lot of the same parameters of stage 2, but we only went to stage 2 because the governor asked us to, and it, we, like Humboldt County and others, really didn't think we had a problem, which has proven out to be the facts.
So in a sense, it doesn't really affect us that much if we're in stage 2.
No, but and again, we'll have this at committee discussion, but there's a Sacramento thinking that centers around the Central Valley, and it's starting to affect policy. And so every chance we can get to remind them that one size doesn't fit all, we should take that. And so that's kind of where we're at.
Yeah, Dave, I think a good example is that's when we were dealing with the water bond a number of years ago, and you look at what they were proposing in that multi-billion-dollar fund. There wasn't much at all for the Central Coast area until we started hammering in on that, and they made some changes.
Yep.
So in all of these water issues that come up in so many different contexts, is there anything new about supporting changes in agricultural practices and farming practices to make more efficient use of water, less waste? Anything new on that front?
In the budget, and there have been bills in previous years that we've been obviously tracking and monitoring, is not so much in the recycling, but it's really investing in agricultural technology of making things more efficient, basic, being more mindful of our resources and pollution and et cetera. So if you want to put technology in there, that's what the legislature has been investing in. And the governor in his past 3 budgets has put, I would probably say, total about $140 million into ag technology to in hopes of reducing strains on the resources. So that's probably the closest thing to what you're referring to.
And Chair Paul, that's probably a good segue into this final section of our report, and that's the outreach that we've been doing with the legislators, both at the state level and by happenstance, the federal level. Over the last, like I said earlier, we've been reaching out to Senator Lair just to keep updated as to where we're at with some of these issues that Dave has talked about. But with our new member coming in, Assembly Member Don Addis, we've spent some time already briefing her on peninsula issues. She was making a presentation back to the hospitality group there on the peninsula back in December, and we were able to brief her on some of those issues. A lot of this is still new to her before that. And I've had this ongoing relationship with her and her staff, and invited her to come to the area for a briefing of MPWMD issues and a tour. And in fact, that's one of the things we're doing next Thursday, I believe, the 16th, is spending some time with her. And I don't know if staff will be joining her, but providing a tour of the Pure Water project there, but also a briefing on some of our issues. So we'll continue to work with her and make sure she's attuned to what's important to us on the peninsula. With one of our other clients, the city of Watsonville, we have this annual legislative breakfast for our local legislators and federal legislators. And in that process, we invited Senator Padilla, and he sent his state director. I've had a long, ongoing relationship with Senator Padilla for the last 20 years plus, right after he got out of MIT. So we've talked about, bringing him over to the Central Coast, and he's got that as an agenda. So as part of that, he asked the state director, James Schwab, to talk to me about seeing some other portions of the Monterey, Santa Cruz area while he was in town. Not himself, but his state director, in preparation for something later on in the future. And so we did that. And as far as the Monterey area goes, Dave was kind enough to set up something with Pure Water. So we gave them a tour of that while they were in town. And then I took them over to visit Tenor Farms and their facility there, where they do the bagging of all the fresh vegetables and so forth. And it was a good opportunity for them to see about water, because not only the pure water and how we're trying to do our best in conserving and water and doing what we can, what we have in reuse, but they could see their Tenor Farms, with all the wash that waters millions of gallons that are used on a regular basis to get that produce to. So that was very important, and they were very interested in those particular areas, getting more information and sharing that with the senator. So those are some of the things that we've done. With Robert Rivas, we've had an ongoing relationship with him, and we will always continue to keep him informed of what's important to the area. I think now that he doesn't represent the district directly, but I think as a speaker, his responsibility is statewide now. So that gives him the capability to get himself more involved with, not that he hasn't already, but more involved with the water issues as they affect ag and places like the peninsula and Monterey and so forth. So we continue to do that work on behalf of the district.
Excellent. Excellent. And these interactions that you've had with the legislators and staffers, has the subject of the desalination plant come up?
Oh, I'll say, I think Dave with Senator Laird in particular, with the whole issue back in November, December. Yeah, that was a high priority. We've talked to the new assembly member about that, and that'll be part of the briefing that we do with her when she comes next week. But yes, it certainly is. They're aware of it and they're interested.
Dave, do you have anything to add about that?
Well, yeah, Laird totally on it. When we see Don Addis next Thursday, that's going to be subject of discussion. She's really green on Monterey Peninsula issues. I did talk to her during her campaign, and she knew a little bit about it. Somebody had briefed her, but I don't think she knows how volatile our situation really is. Back on Rivas, his district does include the industrial ponds and a lot of the intake facilities for Pure Water Monterey, which is how we've kind of co-opted him a little bit. And that's why he takes an interest in Pure Water Monterey. Obviously, City of Salinas is smack dab in that district as well. So, they're a big part of Monterey One Water. So he is a friend to us. And as John and Lori pointed out, they've had a long-standing relationship with him. So, but Addis is a bit of a cipher to me personally. She's got long-standing San Luis Obispo roots, and it'll just be an education. But we will tell her what our problems are.
Well, it's very good that you're meeting with her soon, and that she'll have the tour of the Pure Water Monterey, and that seems like a good, a good development. Glad you're doing that.
I am too. I know her really well, texting kind of pal. And I would not refer to her as a cipher. I mean,
no, to me personally, I just don't know anything about her.
Yeah, she is on our side for whatever we need, honestly, in my opinion. I feel very positive toward Dawn, really do.
Great. Hey, were you on that call with her and John Laird about some of the Carmel River issues yesterday?
Not yesterday.
Okay.
No, but she and John Laird, well, we've talked, a group of us have talked before, but I was not on that call.
Okay. So, John and Lori, do you have more?
No,
They better not, because I promised Lori I'd get her out of here. By
Okay, okay, I just have to say that, I mean, the number of bills is so staggering. I mean, even in the selected, I did look at your bill summary, and it just amazes me. It seems like the legislators don't seem to get together and coordinate and just, get together, the 3 or 4 that want to have a bill on a particular subject, to get together and produce one instead of 4.
They
Seems very-
eventually have to, because they can't cross codes. So it's kind of a race of who's going to get the credit and who's going to have the better bill. And then they kind of have to conjoin them or chapter them out. So they eventually have to get there. But it's a free for all right now.
Yeah, a year like this with all the new legislators, like I said earlier, they all want to show something back to their district and their constituents, what they're doing, and get some headlines.
But can't they co-sponsor something?
And I took 6 or 7 bills that Lori had identified off because they were definitely of interest to us from kind of a climate change and coastal stuff, but it wasn't directly related to our water interests. And still, it's this long laundry list of stuff. And by the end of the calendar year, it'll be whittled down probably to 10 things we care about.
Well, thank goodness we have you to track all these bills and budget moves, and really appreciate all the work you're doing and developing the relationships and taking Dawn Addis on a tour and showing her more of our area. Very, very helpful. Do the other committee members?
In session right now? I mean, not in session, but are they meeting right now
Yes, they are.
on Thursday?
Well, Thursday mornings, and then they check out and go back to the district. Yeah.
Got it.
And that's why we actually have her Thursday afternoon next week. She'll be driving back from Sacramento, swing out over here, and then take, 101 down to SLO.
Got it.
Through the chair, yeah, just a little sidebar. I want John to give me a call.
Okay.
I don't know if you got my cell number is 277-6379.
Okay, I will.
All right.
Okay, so you said, I think then, thank you for all of the work and for the update and the reports. Glad we have your help.
Our pleasure. Thank you so much.
Yeah, and we'll continue without you, John, and Lori, or John, if you want to stay on. But we did meet with John Laird October 28th or 29th. And we laid out some legislative interests we had, and he didn't take the bait, so to speak. We had worked up actual proposed language for special legislation on our LAFCO issue, and he did not want to carry that as special legislation. His suggestion was do a cleanup bill to our overall legislation, and then slip LAFCO language in there. That wasn't really something we want to do, and it's been against the advice of our boards in Laredo for quite some time, because there are parties out there who would love to see our legislation reopened.
Oh, boy.
And so that one didn't take hold. And then the other one was to see if we could get some statewide funding for purchased water for protective groundwater levels in the Seaside Basin. And he did not think legislation was the way to do it. Rather, a budget trailer bill or a budget earmark similar to our 4.8 million last year was his preference. And now, of course, the state is pleading poverty, and it's very unlikely. And we also need a funding mechanism that would be multi-year rather than a single year. And so that doesn't really fit. So I won't say we're flailing, but we're struggling to have a a state-oriented plan for this year. Obviously, getting to know Don Addis is a significant part of the plan, just to see where that leads, and also protecting our $4.8 million current fiscal year earmark in the governor's budget is part of the plan. But we don't really have a legislative plan coming out of the gates this year, other than to be nimble and to be able to act when things come up.
Could potential funding for protective water levels, could that be addressed in the context of Sigma? I see there's a lot of bills about making various changes to Sigma. Is that a possibility?
Yeah, the unfortunate part is, we're talking about Seaside Basin, which has been adjudicated. So under Sigma, it's got a special carve out.
Yeah.
You don't have to have a plan. You don't have to report the same way. And it probably also means you're not going to get funded the same way.
Yeah.
And the additional problem is, if we were to step in, even the water master is talking about, looking at funding mechanisms and so forth. And we did some research with Bob Jakes and with Cal-Am on some other groundwater systems and their financing plans, like in the San Gabriel Basin in Southern California and so forth. The problem is that the payers are very likely to be the same as the Pure Water Monterey payers, the Cal-Am ratepayers, the district's constituents. They're all the same people. And so the hope was to spread it out over the whole state and, get a bit of funding. So I think we'll look at some of these water bonds and see if, there's groundwater protection money that we might be able to tap. That'll be something to look at. But we don't have a clear path right now.
Okay. On our list, stays on our list.
Yeah.
Thank you.
So skipping item 4, we should just go straight to item 5. Item 4, all I had was what we've already talked about, the Monday's event and then next Thursday's Don Addis. So, so item 5, the proposed plan for the year, does differ significantly from previous plans, which only included really the second half of this plan. The front part of this plan is adapted from CSDA, the California Special Districts Association policy guidance. And the idea is that, there's 4 generalized areas of advocacy priorities that are identified here in the, beginning of the 3rd page, I think it is, 4th page. And the idea are, from CSDA is your general goals or priorities, in the revenue finance areas and taxation, which doesn't apply much to us, governance and accountability. So that'd be like, meeting rules. So all these things about Zoom meetings and emergency meetings and so forth, we, continue to identify with those things affecting human resources and personnel, and then infrastructure and investment. They're very generalized priorities, but I think that they do represent the district's goals. And then leading up to those priorities is kind of the policy statement. I call it a plan, but it's really a policy, which is follow the guidance of our industry associations like Aqua, CSDA, water reuse. Take positions of support or oppose, support if amended, oppose, or oppose unless amended. The goal is to get, in some respects, prior approval of the committee so that we don't have to come to the committee every time there's an ask. There's a current ask from Aqua to lend our logo and our signature panel to the Aqua supported assembly bill, and I can't remember what that number is, but that's what Lori was referring to earlier.
About what topic?
So Aqua is supporting a bill on they'll end up supporting several during the course of this year, but they have one out in front right now, which is on, I believe it's permit streamlining on water-related projects. And so the first 4 pages of this plan are new to the district and new to the committee, and will be new to the board. But it in effect is saying we need flexibility to participate in advocacy. Our goals in advocacy are these advocacy priorities that are somewhat defined. And you know, when the full board can't act on something, and when the legislative advocacy committee can't act on something, that the general manager is basically pre-approved to follow these kind of policy objectives. So that's the only change. And then the second half of the proposed plan are the how and the what. You know, you see our federal delegation, the relationship with the Ferguson Group going forward, the priority on word earmarks, trying to get some of that $20 million pumped into the system. And then the same for state priorities, the state delegation. You don't see the picture, but you see Anna's name and Robert's name there, because they are what we call friends of the district, and we want to be friends of theirs as well. And then our priorities are keeping the money and getting Pure Water Monterey to move forward. So it's kind of a simplified goal for the year. You know, we did fund the planning for the removal of the Hastings Reserve ford across the creek, and I think we do need to do some follow-up on that. And then John and Lori mentioned the water bonds. One of the impetus for the water bonds is the IRWM monies from Prop 1 are finally about to run out. The Prop 1 had several funding cycles, and it looks like we're going to see the last funding cycle, so the last remaining amount of Prop 1 monies that were pushed into the different regional programs will be extinguished pretty much next fiscal year, I think, according to Maureen Hamilton. And so the idea would be to do another water bill where one section of that bill will be regionally distributed IRWM, which is Integrated Regional Water Management Program monies. And we've got a funding agreement with all the other Central Coast agencies where we just split the money. So it works better for us that way than trying to compete, because when we used to compete, we never succeeded. You know, we got 1.1 million one time when we had to compete for it, and Watsonville and Pajaro were getting a ton of money. Santa Barbara was getting a ton of money. So we've managed to get money, which we then distributed. You've seen, you know, projects in Monterey, the stormwater project, Sand Cities, stormwater on the west end, and you know, some other things. So that'll be a priority to make sure whatever water bond bill legislation goes through has enough money coming back to the region, and then going to our regional partners and making sure that we keep the funding agreement in place for another round. But that's here under the state of California strategy, and then the local strategy is unchanged basically from last year.
Mary?
I'm so sorry, but I'm going to have to leave. I thought we were ending at noon, and I apologize.
Yeah, we should have.
Yeah, well, that's fine. But is there anything that I absolutely need to hear before I leave the meeting?
Nope.
Okay,
I'm
I
just
am
going-
sorry.
Well, thank you. And I'm sorry the meeting has gone so long, but
That's
thank
okay. It
you.
was a very good meeting, a lot of good information. You know,
Yeah.
I believe that legislative action is the most effective way that we can get things done that we need, no matter what our focus is. So thank you so much.
I
And I'll
agree.
see you guys later. Bye.
Thank you, Mary. no, I totally agree about the importance of all that. So what seems important to me is just that we have the legislative plan meet our needs and, give the guidance, parameters, so forth that's necessary so that, as it says in the draft, that the general manager and our consultant, so that you can take action when needed and don't have to come back to the board and you can't. So my question is just, I have a few specific questions, but overall, just does it meet that need? Does it meet that need? Is there anything that needs to be clarified here? Either Dave or our consultants, if you think there's anything that's not clear. I had just a few questions myself, and one is just how come the priorities come after the procedure? It says advocacy priorities comes after advocacy procedures. Maybe it doesn't matter. I always think priorities come first and the procedures are a way to carry out the priorities. So, does reversing the order, would that be better? Just a question.
I'm fine with that. And this is just, as I said, I took it from my CSDA.
That's how.
And that's how.
Yeah, that's how they did it.
Yeah.
Okay, maybe it doesn't matter. I leave that, something to consider. One question I have at the very, very end of this document, the local strategy section, it has as a goal to better articulate CPUC activities to local ratepayer groups. So who did you have in mind? Is that, basically our staff and our board or our consultants or?
Yes, and we have been doing it probably better than ever. And it's because we enlisted the help of folks like Landwatch, Public Water Now, that have big email lists, and they've tended to push our messaging out for us. And then bringing Wellman Ad online and then securing that 24,000 email address mailing list of our own. We've now been able to use the newsletters from time to time to advocate. So, it just falls on us, myself or Stephanie Locke or Phil Wellman to piece together the messaging. And so we've gotten out, quite a bit of information, both about pure water expansion, about the Coastal Commission activities. So I think we're doing a much better job than we were even 2 years ago.
I agree. I've seen a lot of good. I'm using Landwatch very effectively. Yeah,
there's some question as to who uses whom in that relationship, but it's a good relationship.
Yeah, well, they do really excellent work that, is very, very compatible with our goals. So, okay. So any questions for us, John?
On the local effort, I did want to mention.
I'm good. I think we covered it all.
Yeah, and John may have glossed over it, but John and I had lunch with Steve Kerrigan, the city manager of City of Salinas, yesterday. Was that yesterday, John?
Yeah.
I've been here too long now that I used to know every hotel general manager, every hospitality agency member, all the governing committees of the chambers and so forth, and every city manager. And, even Jaime Fonts or I don't know if he says Fontes or Fonts, but at Seaside, we have not yet met in person. We've talked on the phone and we've shared some correspondence and things. And so it was great to see Steve Kerrigan, but he told me he came on board in January of 2021. And I'm like, my goodness, here we are, 2 years later and I hadn't met him personally, which is just not good. So I've got to go back on the circuit of getting to meet all these new people. We've got new city council members in almost every city. And so that has always been one of the great forms of communication locally is, stopping by a city council meeting, or at least having an open door policy going both ways with the city managers. So it's time for another round of that as well.
Yeah, and I have similarly have a to-do list of my own to reach out to City Council in Pacific Grove and the PG Chamber of Commerce and maybe the Utilities District in Pebble Beach to meet new members and reach out as well. I got that on my to-do list. I just want to reiterate to you, Dave, and to you, John, that, when it seems like it might be helpful to include a board member in some meetings or events to, as Ian was saying earlier, and Mary, that to reach out and see how we can make that happen. Ian, did you have any
Go ahead.
questions or comments before we wrap up?
No, I don't have any at this time.
Okay, thank you.
All right, John, call the mayor. Call the mayor.
Call the
I
mayor.
will.
All right.
Okay, meeting
All right,
adjourned.
everybody.
Thank you all very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.